Hello and welcome to our nightly news program coming to you live on All 24 News Channel. Here from Algiers, next are the top stories. Pedro Sanchez calls for early elections after Socialist Party suffered heavy losses across Spain in regional and municipal elections. Also coming up in his victory speech, Erdogan pledges to build a strong economy and set aside differences while Syrian refugees breathe a sigh of relief over his victory. Also ahead, Sudan's military and rapid support forces agree ceasefire extension as the conflict inflicts widespread destruction on residential areas in Khartoum and adjacent cities. And the Russian Ministry of Defense announces it bombed airports in Ukraine and reveals that it targeted the Patriot system for the second time. Hello again and welcome to the details. First up in our topical news, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has responded to the triumph of the right-wing opposition in Sunday's regional and municipal elections by calling a risky snap general election that will determine his political future and that of his minority coalition government. More with Salman Asib in this report.
Spain was due to hold general elections by the end of the year. However, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez on Monday called an early general election for July 23rd in a surprise move after his Socialist Party took a serious battering in local and regional elections. Sanchez, the nationalist leader, has previously insisted that he would ride out his four-year term with leftist government coalition partner, indicating that an election would be held in December. In addition, the Prime Minister said he had spoken to King Philip VI and would hold a special cabinet meeting to dissolve Parliament.
I had a meeting with His Majesty the King and have informed the head of state of my intention to hold a cabinet meeting this afternoon to dissolve Parliament and call a general election according to the prerogative best owed by the Prime Minister on the Prime Minister by the Constitution. The official announcement of the election will appear in the official bulletin on May 30th and the election will take place on Sunday, July 23rd, according to the time frame established by law. I have made this decision based on the election results yesterday.
The leader of Spain's conservative opposition People's Party welcomed the announcement of a snap general election in July and asked voters to give his party a clear majority. The sooner the election, the better, as he put it.
Spain yesterday took the first step to open a new political cycle. And from this very moment, I call on all the citizens to finish off that political cycle on July 23rd. To call snap elections doesn't hide what happened yesterday. Spaniards have said enough. We've had it up to here.
For their part, many residents in the city of Madrid expressed mixed reactions about Sanchez's decision regarding elections, a day after his left-wing coalition government suffered heavy losses in regional ballots.
I think it's a bit hasty, but I don't think it's bad because I think he has lost the confidence from people. But we will have to see the outcome if it's going to be more of the same, although I hope it will be different.
It's worth noting that only 3 of the 12 regions holding elections will retain socialist dominance by very narrow margins, with the rest likely to go to the Conservative People's Party, albeit with coalitions or informal support agreements with the far-right Vox party.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan's supporters are celebrating after Turkey's longtime president won Sunday's vote, securing another 5 years in power. During his speech, Erdogan stated that there was no anger nor resentment against anyone. He said it was time to put aside all the debates and conflicts regarding the election and unite around national goals and dreams. He also added that inflation was the most urgent issue for the country, but said it would also fall following the policy rate that was cut to 8.5% from 19% 2 years ago.
Solving the problems caused by the price increases as a result of inflation and compensating for welfare losses is the most urgent issue of the process ahead. It is not difficult for us to find a solution to these issues.
Still with the same file, Erdogan has extended his 2-decade rule of Turkey to one more term after winning the election runoff against opposition leader Kılıçdaroğlu. This time, Erdogan is expected to face numerous challenges that put his government to the test as economic issues and currency collapse provoked cost of living crisis. Osama Ayadi reports.
Turkey's economic issues have always been the top concern for Turkish people, and it seems that it's high on Erdogan's new terms agenda, a day after his secured victory in Sunday's runoff election. Erdogan was re-elected with more than 52% of the vote, extending his rule into a third decade. He must now confront skyrocketing inflation that has fueled the cost of living crisis and rebuild in the aftermath of a devastating earthquake that killed more than 50,000 people and leveled entire cities.
We have also taken the chance to vote and been following the results closely. I hope good things will happen for the country. People are struggling with the economic situation. Life and economic conditions depress people. I hope from now on, stronger and better economic programs will be introduced for people.
Many of Turkey's nearly 4 million Syrian refugees were among those celebrating Erdogan's victory. Winning the election was a sign of relief for Syrian refugees in the country after they had lived under threats of repatriation and the rise of discrimination and hate attacks.
Erdogan's victory was expected because the West agrees with him. What we care about is for the Syrian people to reunite and for the Syrians living in Turkey to return to their homeland.
Known for his combative populism and for reshaping the country's laws to consolidate his power, Erdogan now looks ahead to another 5-year term and ongoing concerns about the country's direction and democracy.
Algerian National People's Army Chief of Staff Major General Said Chengriha confirmed on Monday the seriousness and effectiveness of the army in the past few years is sufficient to protect security, stability and independence of Algeria and its territorial and popular unity. This came in a speech broadcast to all units of the 2nd Military Region in Iran, west of the country, via video conferencing technique as part of a working visit of the Algerian Army Chief of Staff to the region. Algerian Ministry of Defense indicated that Major General Said Chengriha confirmed on the occasion his deep appreciation for the performance of the armed forces personnel and the impressive results they achieve in all fields. Still with Algeria-related news, Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman inaugurated the African Insurance Organization conference themed The Contribution of Insurance to Facing Food Security Challenges in Africa. Bin Abdurrahman called on the insurance industry sector to adopt innovative solutions to meet the challenges of food security in Africa. Zara Farjani has the details.
Algeria hosts this week the annual conference of the African Insurance Organization, which brings together in its 49th edition experts and specialists to discuss the issue of the insurance industry contribution to food security in Africa, in an economic situation marked by tensions and crises on global and regional scales. Algerian Prime Minister, presiding over this conference, indicated in his statement that the common objective is developing practical recommendations and applicable solutions in African countries to meet the challenges of food security.
This indicates that we as Africans must make efforts in order to reach global rates, but to approach the minimum level of these rates. This requires from you, as an African organization for insurance, hard work and closeness to investors and workers in all fields, especially in the agricultural field.
Algeria seeks to consolidate relations with African countries and their financial institutions through preparing a new insurance law aimed at bettering sector's contribution to economic development and also improving the organization of the national insurance market.
Algeria is currently working on restoring a new insurance law that aims to improve the organization and performance of the insurance market and to perpetuate the principle of honest competition among the stakeholders in an effort to raise the level of this activity and make it play the role assigned to it in the economic and social field of the country.
Our industry has an important role to play in addressing food insecurity in Africa and should be seen as an integral part of the agricultural system. According to the 2023 Africa Insurance Pulse, agricultural insurance, in particular, is a viable option for reducing agricultural production risk caused by weather events, pests, market price fluctuations.
The 49th session of the General Assembly of the African Insurance Organization reflects the great awareness of the role and contribution of the insurance sector in facing the current and future challenges of Africa, especially in the field of food security.
The Italian city of Turin hosted the Algerian-Italian Forum on the prospects for the development of the automotive industry in Algeria. The forum was an opportunity for Italian investors to meet with their Algerian counterparts. The automotive industry in Algeria has seen an important shift recently with the establishment of a factory of the Italian brand Fiat in the city of Oran. The first made-in-Algeria car is due to be released this coming December.
اليوم دخلنا في أسلوب جديد.
Today we entered into a new, serious and actual method for a real automobile industry. We're ready to launch in the month of December the first locally manufactured car in Algeria. This indicates that the promise made by the President of the Republic has been fulfilled, confirming that Algeria is able to enter the world of the automobile industry from its broad gate.
In this business forum is that really the Algerian authorities, they are putting a lot of emphasis, a lot of means from financial, from economical, from incentive point of view and political as well.
I think this is a very good opportunity to reinforce the relationship between our country, Italian and Algerian country. We are very proud to be a friend of Algerian country, Algerian people.
Pierre Audin, son of Algerian coast fighter Maurice Audin, passed away in the French capital Paris on Sunday at the age of 66 following an incurable disease. Pierre Audin departed after 6 decades spent with his mother, Josette Audin, in the struggle to search for the truth about the assassination and torture of his late father. Maurice Audin, after his kidnapping by the elements of the French paratroopers in Algeria's liberation war. Calm has returned to the south of the Libyan capital Tripoli after limited clashes on Sunday evening between two security forces, one affiliated to the National Unity Government and the other to the Presidential Council. Local media reported that the streets of Al Jaraba and Ras Hassan in the center of the capital witnessed clashes that lasted 4 hours. According to a statement by the government's emergency and ambulance service, the armed clashes resulted in the injury of 1 person. For its part, the Tripoli Security Directorate stated that all roads are open and traffic has returned to normal without giving further details of the cause of the confrontation, I'm saying, or the damage caused. Nigeria's new head of state was officially sworn in on Monday. Tinubu took his oath in open-air ceremony in the capital's Eagle Square. He inherits a struggling economy with record debt, shortages of foreign exchange and fuel, a weak naira currency, nearly 2 decades high inflation, skeletal power supplies, and falling oil production due to crude theft and underinvestment.
Our administration will govern you only on your behalf, but never rule over you. We shall consult and dialogue, but never dictate. We shall reach out, go on, but never put down a single person for holding views contrary to our own.
Sahrawi President Ibrahim Ghali participated on Monday in the inauguration ceremony of Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the new president of Nigeria. Ghali attended a dinner hosted by the outgoing president of Nigeria, Muhammad Buhari, in honor of the heads of states and government and the delegations participating in the inauguration ceremony. The president of the Sahrawi Republic had arrived Sunday evening in the capital Abuja, accompanied by an important delegation. Sahrawi press agency confirmed confirmed that President Brahim Ghali's participation expresses the depth of the bonds of friendship and cooperation between the two countries. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf said that Africa can finally or can only turn the last page of the history of the abhorrent colonialism, the shameful occupation, including the plundering of wealth of Western Sahara, only when the inalienable rights of the Sahrawi people are met.
The recent colonization, more precisely in Western Sahara, needs help and support from us in order for them to exercise their inalienable right to self-determination, under the condition that Africa can finally turn the last page of the history of the abhorrent colonialism, the shameful occupation, including the plundering of wealth of Western Sahara.
The Algerian Foreign Minister recalled on the occasion of the celebration of Africa Day 2023 Algeria's continuous efforts at the head of the international mediation to advance the path of peace and reconciliation in Mali, praising the adherence of the Malian parties to the Algiers Agreement and their serious involvement in the endeavors they had recently initiated to overcome the current difficulties.
Algeria continues its efforts at the head of the international mediation to advance the path of peace and reconciliation in the brotherly Republic of Mali. My country praises the adherence of the Malian parties to the Algiers Agreement and their serious involvement in the endeavors they had recently initiated to overcome the current difficulties and guaranteeing the rapid resumption for the political goals which aim for continuing the agreement for the union, peace and stability of this brotherly country.
Mali's authorities called on the United States on Sunday to stop what it claimed was a disinformation campaign after sanctions were imposed on 2 Malian officers whom Washington accused of taking part in massacre in the center of the country in 2022. Spokesman for the Malian government, Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga, said in a press statement that his country's government learned with astonishment about the unilateral decision issued by the U.S. government to punish 2 financial officers based on the only United Nations report.
The transitional government calls on the United States to stop disinformation campaign against Mali and calls on it to adhere to 3 basic principles in their bilateral relations. First, respecting the sovereignty of the Malian state. Second, respecting the strategic choices of Mali and choosing them. And third, taking into account the interests of Malian people in all decisions.
Still with African news, Somali security forces have arrested the prominent leader of Al-Shabaab terrorist group in the lower Shabelle region, adjacent to the capital, Mogadishu. The Security and Intelligence Service confirmed, quoting the Somali news agency, that the army forces succeeded in arresting one of the senior leaders of Al-Shabaab group based on accurate intelligence information. The same source also indicated that the terrorist leader had held several positions within the ranks of the terrorist group for 16 years. The Sudanese army, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the rapid support forces led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo agreed to extend the ceasefire agreement in Sudan for more 5 days. The previous truce lasted for 7 days and witnessed heavy fighting before its end on Monday evening. Here's Islam Sid with more.
Clashes renewed in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, between the Sudanese warring parties hours before the end of the ceasefire, which lasted for a week. Nonetheless, the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces agreed to extend the ceasefire agreement in the country for additional 5 days. The Office of African Affairs and the U.S. State Department announced that Saudi Arabia and the United States held the extension of the ceasefire, saying it provides time for a potential longer-term extension and additional humanitarian aid.
Saudi Arabia and the United States welcomed the agreement by the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces to a 5-day extension of the ceasefire agreement they signed on May 20, 2023. The extension would provide time for further humanitarian assistance, restoration of essential services, and discussion of a potential longer-term extension. While imperfectly observed, the May 20, 2023 ceasefire enabled delivery of humanitarian assistance to an estimated 2 million Sudanese people in need. The extension would permit further humanitarian efforts.
In the meantime, Algeria's calls to double efforts to get Sudan out of the cycle of violence have been reiterated by the Algerian Foreign Minister, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, who underlined the suffering of the Sudanese as a result of this crisis.
في ظل هذا المشهد القاتم.
In the light of this difficult crisis Sudan is witnessing, Algeria calls for redoubling efforts and coordinated endeavors between all international and regional actors to get Sudan out of the cycle of violence and division.
On the ground in Sudan, West Darfur province has seen some of the worst fighting in the conflict, where villages and camps for displaced people were destroyed and burned to the ground in the past weeks. According to the head of the UN Refugee Agency, estimates that about 1 million people might flee Sudan by October. Maybe conservative and conflict there risks increasing people trafficking and spreading weapons across a fragile region.
This projection that in the next few months we'll reach these high figures may even be conservative at this point. At the beginning I didn't believe it would be, but now I'm beginning to be worried. The collapse of law and order inside a big country will be the perfect fertile ground for human trafficking.
Since the start of the 6-week conflict, hundreds of people were killed, most of them in the capital. Over 1 million people were internally displaced, and 3,500 have been already fled across Sudan's borders.
To the Middle East now, a 37-year-old Palestinian was killed by Zionist forces on Monday morning in northern Jenin. Ashraf Mohammed Ibrahim, a former prisoner, has died after sustaining wounds from 2 explosive bullets that hit his abdomen and chest. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, meanwhile, 8 people were injured during army raid of Jenin. In a related matter, more than 13 Palestinians were arrested by the occupation during raids at their family homes in the occupied territories. Iran's supreme leader said on Monday he'd welcome the restoration of full diplomatic ties between Egypt and Iran, raising the prospect of Cairo and Tehran normalizing relations after decades of strain. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's comments come after a meeting he held with the visiting Sultan of Oman, Haytham bin Tariq, who is on a visit to Iran that is considered his first since 2020. There have been growing signs of Egypt and Iran potentially restoring ties, particularly as Saudi Arabia and Iran reached a détente in March with Chinese mediation after years of tensions. The Ukrainian parliament approved sanctions imposition against Iran for a period of 50 years in response to what Kiev says Tehran's military aid to Moscow. This comes after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky passed a bill on Sunday under which Ukraine would impose sanctions on Iran, according to the director of the Ukrainian presidential office. The sanctions will include trade, financial, and technological sanctions on Iran and its citizens. Explosions rang out across Kiev on Monday as Russia launched its 16th air attack on Kiev this month, hours after unleashing dozens of missiles and drones overnight. Residents rushed for cover when the sky filled with smoke trails and blast clouds. This Russian air attack comes days after the Russian armed forces have captured the entire city of Bakhmut, as Wagner fighters were reported pulling back from the city.
It is not the first sleepless night. If it is noisy, we spend the night in the corridor. But this does not change our lives. We continue to live. We go on with our lives and keep on enjoying them. The Russians want to inflict as much as damage as possible, scaring civilian population.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday that the situation in Kosovo is alarming. Lavrov made his comment during his visit to Kenya. Let's take a listen.
NATO carried out aggression against Yugoslavia in violation of every conceivable principle of the Helsinki Final Act and other OSCE documents. The situation is alarming, but the West has set a course for the total subjugation of everyone who somehow expresses their own opinion.
Well, we reached the end of our program for tonight. For more, our social media platforms and website are under your service. Thank you for keeping it here. Till next time, take care.